Thank you very much, and it's fantastic to be here on Nyunga Budja, and we really appreciate the very warm welcome that we had, and can I say it is fantastic to have the Nyunga Chamber of Commerce here with us here today. It's something that our government feels really strongly about, and people may be aware that we have as one of our core economic policies is an Aboriginal procurement plan, so we are very keen to be working with Aboriginal enterprise right across the state, and of course the Nyungas here in the southwest, to deliver that, because we absolutely understand that if we are to close the gap, we need that engagement with our Indigenous communities. So we're extremely pleased that you're able to join us here. And of course to all of our guests that have come today, I'm very interested in hearing what you have to say, because this is I would sort of describe it as the keynote address. I'm really developing our thinking in this area. So I'm here to, as much as anything, to learn. But I do want to set out a bit of a framework for what our government's agenda is. And of course, one of our primary agendas is the reconstruction. After the boom, we need to build a stronger, more diversified, resilient economy as we pick up the pieces and help West Australians back onto the path of opportunity and prosperity. And of course, as always, we are committed to building those opportunities in the regions. And we note the work that is being done, and indeed the work that we did when we were last in government, in focusing on those larger regional centres, which we believe have the real prospectivity of growth. And I was keen to participate in this event today because it is driving economic growth, and diversification and regional development is hard. You know, it's not a matter of driving around in a ute and shoveling out buckets of shovel loads of money. It really does require some very deep and very strategic thinking to get us to the place where we really can compete. And I want to acknowledge the work that has been done by people like Stuart Hicks over the last couple of years to try to drive this. And I might say we had a similar approach, but perhaps not as deeply engaged with bringing all the sectors of business and community together to try to find the way in which we can drive the economy forward. As I said, these are not things that can be done in a simple formulaic way, but we do need to explore what has gone before us and what may work, and have a nuanced response of how a particular style of development may indeed work in particular regions. We do, if I can just talk a little bit about a couple of specific funds that we have, and we're certainly very well aware that it's not just about the money, but we have a regional enterprise fund, and I'm very, very keen to really be focusing that on developing entrepreneurial thinking. That I think business is really always has been driven by entrepreneurs. It is not driven fundamentally by government. We can create an ecosphere, but it is the individual enterprise, the desire or the ability to be creative, to see opportunity, that is in fact going to drive growth. And we think that there is a role in the regions for us to be developing that entrepreneurial thinking, starting with senior high school students, but also working with some long-established businesses. It's not all about startups. I think we need to work with established businesses to get them to rethink how they might be managing their businesses differently, how they might be doing their business differently, how they might be targeting their business differently in the 21st century. And there's some very interesting examples of how that does work. Now, we do know that clustering is something that makes a lot of sense, and it's not new. I mean, you go back to medieval England or New York today, and you will find streets where there are clusters, Fishmongers Lane, and a street in New York that's all gold dealers, another street that is all silver dealers. There are very, very sound reasons why businesses should come together to promote a competitive advantage. So we recognise that there's around 70% of people in regional Western Australia live in those regional centres, and that about 42% of the state's gross product is produced in these regional centres. So we really believe that state economic growth cannot occur without those regions, and growth in the regions cannot occur without growth in those regional centres. And we say that we are very, very conscious that it is really not a good economic model to have 72% or 76%, depending on where you draw the boundary, of our population in one city, of our state's population in one city. So we see that for the sake of good development across the city, across the state, that we need to be really, really focused in a serious way in building those regional cities. So we globally, we know that young, small, medium enterprises are the primary source of job creation, and you would have all heard those figures. They're trotted out all the time. We note that SMEs who are less than 5 years old are responsible for 17% employment and create 42% of all new jobs, making them the highest job creators. But I do say, coming back to an earlier point, that I do think it is very important that we don't forget the existing businesses and forget how indeed we might transform existing businesses. And of course, the majority of businesses in Western Australia, and in particular in our regions, fall within that category. And it's a real challenge for businesses of this scale to tap into the growth markets, particularly those in Asia. So we see our role is to create the conditions that will ensure that the SMEs have the capability and networks to grow in scale, as well as to mobilise private funds and resources that support their productivity in order to create jobs. It is innovation along this value chain that is so strongly correlated to economic growth and the major force in competitiveness and resilience. And without that innovation, we just simply are going to stagnate and be in decline. So innovation is driven by the capability of the workforce and the institutions to create that culture of creativity and incentives for change. We need to be a state of innovators and global leaders in the industries in which we will specialise. And I point out here again that the importance of fostering that spirit of entrepreneurialism in young people, and indeed encouraging and providing the opportunities to give vent for that. And I'm really interested in the work that has been done in many places to do that. We are very conscious too that this is our ability to be creative and innovative to some extent is linked to the provision of digital infrastructure. And it is going to be an incredibly important part of this agenda for us to deliver the ability for clusters to form in our regional centres to have 21st century digital infrastructure. We see Western Australia has been sort of left, so we see the rollout of the NBN being the slowest in this state. We unfortunately we are not getting, I think, the NBN that we need for the 21st century. So very much part of driving these sorts of change will be engaging with the federal government to ensure that we get that digital infrastructure that is absolutely necessary for us to be able to participate in global markets. That is the milieu for which that we need to operate. It is the superhighways that we need to be able to participate in the global economy. I know that there are many regional entrepreneurs out there that have to drive 30 or 50 kilometres to even get out of a mobile black spot to open their laptop and see if they have any orders. Now that's clearly not the basis for brave new industry in our regions. So we do know that competitiveness, as we say, starts at a place level. Businesses start, and again, keep going back to that. There's a role for government, but businesses start up and form competitive advantage around natural resources, infrastructure, and through their talented people. And I know Tim's comment that it is not all comparative advantage, but that does play to it, and we need to be very smart about recognising what our comparative advantage is, and then build on top of that comparative advantage the competitive advantage that comes through the creativity, innovation, and technology in our community. We see that here in Western Australia, regional centres already support our highest value primary industry and underpin our state competitiveness. And that's why I am particularly pleased that I have those two portfolios of agriculture and regional development, because we believe that there is so much innovation possible in that agricultural space that will help us drive regional growth. So building on the capability of regional centres and their interests is paramount in capitalising on global markets. So what can government do? We can regulate, reform sectors, supply infrastructure, hard and soft. But again, we recognise that it's hard to tactically support the development of competitive industries. So we know that we have got to work together to get this right. We have got to become, within government, very, very focused on working with the private sector to ensure that we can establish realistic goals that are very much placed in sound economic principles. And of course, one of the goals that we are examining here today is this notion, not a new notion, but one that has been dusted off and brought to the fore of industry clustering. And as Tim set out, this local economic development approach provides an inroad to identify and work with entrepreneurs, foster collaboration between businesses, develop opportunities for innovation and value creation. Now, it is an approach that is tried and tested. There are extensive cluster programs that have rolled out across Europe, the UK, US and Asia, embedded as part of their industry development. As part of their industry development program. So I think, and as I say, I think it is so important for us to be learning from what has happened around the world, and that's why we're so pleased that we've got such speakers coming here today. But we do always need to recognise that we have to adapt those to local circumstances. We have been doing some great work in our regional centres to identify what the particular clusters might be, marine clusters, for example, in Geraldton. We've seen, and not necessarily in a town, but around Manjimup, we've seen the Southern Forest Food Alliance, which has been an enormously positive example of growers coming with the support of the state government, growers coming together to create a unified and powerful brand, creating a special market floor at the Canning Vale markets, and really seeing tremendous growth in their markets because they have come together and recognised that together they can provide a more powerful brand, and now looking forward how they can indeed improve the physical infrastructure that will allow their businesses to expand. We are very interested in seeing in Albany, for example, which I think is certainly a place I'm deeply attached to, but that is a centre where we would like to see a cluster around renewable energy. We've determined that we are going to develop a wave power centre of excellence down there, and that, in addition to the wind and solar developments in Albany, has really the potential to create something unique with the University of Western Australia that is based down there. So these ideas are real. We have the opportunity now under the federal government have a City Deals program, which is really very much aimed at developing those skills within the community to identify the investment priorities. Those, of course, we haven't got a City Deal in Western Australia yet, but we will certainly be speaking with the federal government about incorporating our towns into the City Deal program, and looking at how we then can leverage off things like the Regional Growth Fund, $200 million program that has been developed, and which is available to those entities that have done a City Deal. So we think there's a lot of good work that has been done, a lot more to do, and we really look forward to hearing today about getting a deeper and more profound understanding of how we drive this concept of clustering. Thanks very much.